Hello, welcome to chapter 1, to our lesson on chapter 1 of Matilda by Roald Dahl. So to begin with, I'd like to just give a quick overview about the chapter, which by now you would have read. Essentially, what we're going to be doing in these videos is taking a look at different aspects, but mostly all along, as you read the text, it is clear that essentially you get to know different characters, and those different characters are a way of, and how they interact are a way of understanding how Roald Dahl wants to bring certain themes and tell the reader how important aspects how so the idea is to go through various aspects of the chapter and highlight, for instance, how characters, the different characters that are presented, and how different traits in the text bring out themes that Roald Dahl has woven into the story for us to learn from. And literature is never simply about a story. There's always messages that are being conveyed beneath them. The characters who we meet in the first chapter are primarily Matilda herself. She's introduced to us first by the narrator, and the narrator also introduces us to Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood and Matilda's brother Michael. Now, besides the narrator, we also get to know about these characters through things that Matilda says when she finally meets the first adult outside of her home, who is Mrs. Phelps, the librarian. In terms of themes, there are two main themes that we will be looking at, and one of them is adults, children, and power, and the other one is the power of fighting injustice. In this following section, we're going to look a little bit at language and cultural insights in the chapter, which are interesting and particular, let's say. So I'm going to take this quote over here, which comes towards the end of the chapter. It says, mostly it was hot chocolate she made, warming the milk in a saucepan on the stove before mixing it. Occasionally, she made Bovril or Ovaltine. It was pleasant to take a hot drink up to her room and have it beside her as she sat in her silent room, reading in the empty house in the afternoons. Now, this comes at the end of the chapter when Matilda's been able to take her books out, and essentially, this is a nice one because Bovril and Ovaltine are not potentially universal drinks to everybody, whereas maybe hot chocolate is quite straightforward. What you have is, in the first instance, you have Bovril. And now Bovril is, as you can see, it's a very particular jar. It's forever been in this black jar with a red top. And what it is a beef paste. It's they call it beef extract, and it's a sticky paste. So when you open that, there's just a very sticky black paste, very dark brown black. And what you do is you take a spoonful, you put it in a mug with hot water, you mix it, and you have a savory hot drink. Now, what people also use it with for is, for example, toast, hot toast with butter and Bovril, or crackers with Bovril, butter and Bovril. And so this is really, it is something that you will find in mostly Commonwealth English-speaking countries, but it is very British. The other one is Ovaltine, which is a malt drink. It is similar to hot chocolate. and same thing, and there you would add milk, hot milk, and it's sweet to think that Matilda, being so small, would be able to do these things, and really highlight how, in many senses, how mature and how capable she is already. The next section, we're going to look at literary devices. Now, these are basically methods used by writers, by authors, when they are crafting their text and when they are expressing themselves, to be able to make things more vivid for the reader. So I'm going to take two particular quotes over here in terms of metaphors. So the first one is when it's in the first couple of pages of the chapter. The narrator is speaking about doting parents who basically are unable to see any fault in their children, which is quite normal, he says. And he explains what he would do if he were a teacher, and in order to put the message through to the parents, how he actually sees their children in real life. So these are two of them. So if I were a teacher, I would cook up some real scorches for the children of doting parents. And the other one is, this allowed her, this is for Matilda, this allowed her 2 glorious hours sitting quietly by herself in a cozy corner, devouring one book after another. When she had read every single children's book in the place, she started wandering round in search of something else. So what are these? So metaphors are a form of figurative language. They're used in order to express, let's say, abstract concepts, and drawing parallel with them with things that are more concrete and more relatable to the reader. And in that way, it makes the message more palpable, more you can feel what the writer is trying to say more vividly. So so over here, both of those that are underlined in red, you can say that they are food related verbs, right? You cook up some real scorches being something that burns, so you're cooking up some real scorches. And the other one is devouring one book after another. That's Matilda, voraciously in the corner of the library, just basically just immersing herself in this beautiful capacity of reading, which is she's now able to indulge in. So in the first one, to cook up some real scorches, to cook up, as we said, implies real attention to detail. You put a bit of this and you put a bit of that, and so that is how the narrator would come up with the insults for the children. And as we said, devouring one book after another, again, it implies the idea of food. Imagine gorging yourself on lots of the things that you like. You can't stop yourself, and that's how she is getting into her books. So these food related verbs, essentially, they add vividness and depth to the language that is being used. They are able to convey the intensity, enthusiasm, thoroughness with which the narrator or Matilda or whoever it is engaging in non-food related activities. It also allows us to express complex ideas in a relatable manner, so that instead of going, she read a lot of books, it is far more engaging, and you can imagine it far better that she's devouring one book after another. Now, sarcasm is a form of irony. It's also it's a literary device, but you will find it mostly in speech, and it's very much part of British English communication. So it's used as a form of wit and a social commentary. So often it's used to kind of poke fun at something without being incredibly direct. So I'm going to read these two quotes, which are quite fun. And again, this is the narrator speaking about those students who need to be put in place. And this is the scorchers, essentially, that he would be writing about. He would have cooked up, to go back to the metaphor that we were looking at before, for the children's reports. So the first one, he says, "It is a curious truth that grasshoppers have their hearing organs in the sides of their abdomen. Your daughter, Vanessa, judging by what she's learned this term, has no hearing organs at all." The second one is, "The only book in the whole of this enlightened household was something called Easy Cooking, belonging to her mother." So in the first quote about the grasshoppers, he casually relates to grasshoppers, and how essentially anatomically, or they're able to hear close to their abdomen. And then he goes, well, your daughter isn't enabled to hear because she's learned nothing at all. But it's done in a very offhandish manner. It's not direct, it's not rude necessarily, but it is exactly this. It is sarcasm. It is very subtle. The other thing is, the other quote is about Matilda, who is going through her household trying to look for a book after she's read all the newspapers and all the magazines. And what it says is, the only book in the whole of this enlightened household. So so essentially it's not really an enlightened household if there is only and the only book that you're able to find there is Easy Cooking, belonging to her mother. So again, this enlightened household, which she refers to, is absolute nonsense. Sarcasm is very much something that is used in British culture in everyday conversation. It's often used between friends and family and colleagues, and it is very much a sign of quick wit, of intelligence, and it's a bit of an issue for speakers outside of that culture. It can be seen as insolent or misunderstood completely. Also, it's what it does, very much like metaphors and other literary devices, it gives so much more. It creates layers in terms of what is being said, and it also adds a lot of humor to interactions, which is so much fun, so much more fun than saying something blandly. Like, in the first one, Vanessa, your daughter hasn't understood anything. That is much wittier.